proposing and ratifying of a constitutional amendment revolutionary?
I wouldn't say so, because you could look at the English Petition of Rights and the English Bill of Rights as being amendments to the Magna Carta, adding more strength to that original document.
What was going on in England when the English Petition of Rights was written?
The Glorious Revolution.
Civil War.
It's not a revolution?
It could be.
What was going on during the Bill of Rights? Now you can say
The
that.
Glorious Revolution.
And that wasn't altering how British government and parliament had operated before?
No, it absolutely was.
But isn't that revolutionary?
The idea of proposing amendments in our Constitution is not revolutionary because of the precedent set in England.
So the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, they weren't revolutionary?
The process for proposing those amendments was not revolutionary, even if the amendments themselves might have been.
Anybody else?
I think it's revolutionary because in the United States we have what's known as a written constitution, while in Britain we had an unwritten constitution. So the process is very different. It's amending what's already written rather than adding on to things that set the precedent.
When you talk in your paper about separation of powers and that among the government branches to prevent the abuse and or misuse of government power by one branch, tell me how this applies to what's happening in Congress today.
Would you repeat the question,
Yeah, could you?
please? Would you repeat the question one more time, please?
Okay, you talk about the checks and balances among the branches of government to prevent the abuse and misuse of government power by one branch. Look at what is happening in Congress today and explain how they have been able to circumvent this type of abuse of power. I mean, this brings it right down to the nitty-gritty.
What's going on right now in which any of the branches are not checking the others?
Tea Party, a minority of a minority.
Right. Well, one could argue that the Tea Party has usurped the power of the Republican Party since they were the driving force behind the recent government shutdown, which could be viewed as Congress taking unnecessary power because they allowed a minority to take control and actually shut down the entire government, something that the executive and judicial branches should have checked. But such a check is not provided for because of Congress being allowed to make its own laws.
Okay. And when we look at it from this point of view, excuse me, is there any power or authority that the president has that could have stopped this?
And by this you mean just the government shutdown and the growing bipartisanship, basically?
Mhm. Think about presidential powers. God, I'm answering questions for you.
That's tomorrow's lesson. Presidential powers.
Well, he did attempt to check what was happening in Congress by resisting the urgings of the Tea Party to defund the Affordable Care Act. And with the help of the Senate, he refused to be bullied into that. So that could be seen as a check simply him refusing to comply with one branch of Congress.
When we talk about our form of government, or could the actions of a minority party in the House of Representatives endanger how our government functions in the future?
Quite honestly, as you look at it, it was the Tea Party that was spearheading this action that shut down the government. But they were backed by the Republican Party and by the Speaker of the House. And without that majority, the Republicans are the majority in the House of Representatives, they wouldn't have been able to set what they did and shut down the government. And so as you look at it, it was the Tea Party, and they are a small community. They do represent a small part of the United States, but if you don't have a majority or if you don't have enough people supporting it, I don't see it as being a problem in the future. If someone doesn't support the ideas of the Tea Party, they're not going to go through with it. It needs more of a majority. It needs more representation and more, basically, just people to support it. So I don't see a small minority within a minority being a problem in the future.
You talked in your paper about the need of elected representatives